Well, let's get started. My name is Ken Gaither. I'm an associate dean and professor of strategic communications in the School of Communications, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to this iMedia Capstone event. And I will briefly tell you a little bit about what to expect, and then we'll talk a little bit about the logistics to make sure you can get the maximum benefit from these terrific presentations. As you probably know, these students have been working very, very hard under very unusual circumstances to put together their presentations. And you are in the social media marketing group. So you will see a thread of commonality across their presentations. And many of them have some sort of persuasive component. So through your presentations, we'll go under the streets of New York. We will go to coffee fields. We will go to kitchens. We will fly with the birds in North Carolina and do all kinds of interesting things. So I think it's a fascinating arrangement of presenters. So let me tell you a little bit about this culminating event. This is the capstone. It is an iMedia tradition. And ideally, we would love to be in our home in the Long Building where you could meet with them one-on-one and hear their presentations, but we have moved to this virtual environment and we're going to make the best use of it we can. These students have worked over the course of 10 months, and what they've really done is tried to pull together all of their learning, and it has been significant over 10 months and bring it to bear through these presentations. And hopefully you will see the broad skill sets that they bring and all that they've learned through their iMedia experience. So let me tell you a little bit about how we will proceed. We will have 6 speakers, 6 presenters. Each one will present for 8 to 10 minutes. And as an attendee, you are automatically on mute, both audio and video, and only our panelists can present. And we want you to participate with us and with them. So you'll see the chat function on your screen. Please use that chat function. It is the 6th icon at the bottom of your screen. It has a little voice bubble. Please click on that. And as the moderator, if you have questions, I will see them. We will save the questions for the very end of the presentations. And I will take your questions and I will direct them to our panelists. So please use that chat function and go ahead and just give me an idea of who you would direct your question to, whether it's a person or their project name. And when we get to that Q&A session, I will take your questions and direct them directly to our participants. You should have received a link to a website that gives you all the background on our panelists, a little bit more about them, their presentations, and their bios. Please do visit this website so you get a sense of who they are and a little bit more about what they do and what they're bringing to the table. And it's also a great way for you to get a closer look at their presentations. So please keep the questions coming. And the last thing that I will leave you with as we move forward is there are different ways of viewing our presenters, and you might want to use the grid function up on the right-hand corner of your screen. There are different viewing options. The grid function, particularly when we get to the Q&A, will probably give you the best vantage point for seeing each of our panelists and proceeding with our Q&A. So I will remind our panelists to use mute and we will get started. And it is an honor to begin with Mila Williams. Mila has done a project with the Citygate Dream Center project to assist the Dream Centers with its promotional efforts to increase brand awareness and support. And so her presentation has a very local focus, and I think you'll find it really fascinating. So without further ado, we will start with Mila. And then in turn, after her presentation, I will go from panelist to panelist, briefly introducing them. And then we will proceed to our Q&A. Again, the Q&A is at the end, and please keep the questions coming using the chat function. So without further ado, let's start with Mila. Mila.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, you all should be able to see my screen. I hope so. Okay, so hi. I am obviously going to talk about my capstone, which is the Citygate Dream Center project. So just to give an overview of this project, basically, this project involves a custom WordPress site that is meant to promote the Citygate Dream Center, its resources, and its events, as well as just kind of attract donations and volunteers. It also involves branding and social media guides to just ensure that all the pr- promotional promotional efforts are just consistent. This project was intended for two groups. The first of those is just people who might come to the the Dream Center, and then the second are just potential donors. This project was produced using Brackets, WordPress, and the Adobe Creative Cloud software, and it can be accessed at the citygatedreamcenter.com. So you may be wondering, why did I choose this? Well, I have been a part of the Dream Center for a little over 6 years now, I think, and I have seen just how it positively benefits people. To give a little bit more background, this organization is a community center, and basically what they do is they provide just free resources to children and families that can just really help to change their lives. Being a part of this mission for so long, I have personally seen lives changed. So I just really wanted to help them expand just their support and their reach. So as I mentioned, my main deliverable was a bilingual custom site. Before this project, the organization just had a basic I think it was a three page site. However, that site did not really tell you anything about the Dream Center. And so my main goal was just that when people visited this site, that they would easily tell what the Dream Center is and what it has to offer people. So I'll show you a bit more later, but this website is fully responsive. It is bilingual, and it is search engine optimized, excuse me. Um, Users have very easy access to the programs, the upcoming events, the contact information, and just everything else that they might need. Another deliverable was just a style guide. Before this project, they had no branding guides like whatsoever. They did not even have a logo. Their main, like, I guess their logo was just their name, and it was just printed out, and it didn't really do much. So my goal was not only for them to have their own style, but just a logo, something as simple as that. So these are just a few pages from that guide. But yes. And then finally, I created a social media guide, because they did not really have a plan for what their social media goals were. They just kind of posted when they could. So this guide was just meant to tell them what their goals should be, kind of what their tone should be, and just stuff like that. So I was very pleased to present this to them, but it definitely did not come without its challenges. So the first challenge, which really kind of just pushed, it just pushed me, was just dealing with a very extensive color scheme. When I first talked to the client, they told me that they wanted to um, to use a bunch of very bright colors, and I mean 6 very bright colors. So I had to figure out how to use these colors without like making it just a overwhelming amount of just colors. So I was very pleased with the system that I came up with. Basically, I used the colors that they wanted and kind of used it to group the programs that they offer. So the client still got their colors, but it wasn't like an overwhelming amount. So it kind of just brought a structure to the overall site. The second, which was probably the biggest challenge, was just that I was not able to go take pictures like I had planned because of the pandemic. So basically, I had to just make do with the pictures that they had. Most of these pictures were taken with like an iPhone 6, so it was very hard to find pictures uh, that 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 just worked. And they did have video, but I knew that this site would be mainly a site that was viewed on a mobile phone, so I couldn't bog down the whole site with with that. So basically, my solution to that was I used the color overlays, which you see on the left side, kind of to just take away from how blurry the picture actually is. And then I also just had to use some stock pictures. I do plan to go back though and definitely update these pictures once this pandemic is all over and dealt with. And finally, just some challenge that I'll mention briefly. One of these was just making the site in Spanish too. I was not aware of how much coding that takes or how difficult that it can be to even work with a translator. That can be difficult. A second challenge was just integrating a functional events page. I wanted for the client to be able to easily and add an upcoming event without having to code, obviously. So just finding a solution for that was tough, but as you can see on the right-hand side, I did that. Um, and then finally, just a challenge was just dealing with a client. Obviously, dealing with a real client is a little bit more tough than it would be to just work on your own. So that came with challenges, but I'm very thankful for that, for the experience of just working with an actual client. So I think that's all that I have for right now. There is my Twitter and my email. Please email me, tweet me if you have questions. And then also please go visit the actual site. Please just check out what they are all doing there at the Citygate Dream Center. And yeah, this site can be seen at citygatedreamcenter.com. All right, thank you. Let me see if I can stop sharing this.
Mila, thank you for your presentation. And a reminder, if you would like more information or you'd like to see more on any of these presentations, please go to the website where you can learn more about our presenters and their projects. Next up, we will move to Juliet Goodman. And Juliet has found a way to beat COVID-19, and she has taken it under the streets of New York, where it does not spread as easily. So what a novel idea. Her project is a website called Under the Empire City that shares information about the New York subway system. And it is a guided journey, and she is here to take us along for part of that journey. So I now hand it over to Juliet to go under the streets of New York.
you. Let's open this. Great. So thank you for coming. My name is Juliet Goodman, and I will be talking about Under the Empire City. So Under the Empire City shares information about New York City subway system, particularly some facts and figures that are not very well known. I made it a guided journey through the subways, and I matched each fact or statistic to an illustration of matching scenery. So my project was intended primarily for an audience that has experienced the subways, just because they may be more interested in actually learning more about it if they've already been on one, or maybe they have an interest in urban planning or transportation. However, I did want to create something that was so light and fun to use that even if that wasn't your experience prior, it could still be an enjoyable site to flip through. I created it using Adobe Illustrator and Serif, and it can be accessed at undertheempirecity.com. So I already had an interest in this topic. I think it's so cool that, you know, the city that never sleeps needs to have a 24/7 mass transit system. Without it, people, you know, obviously wouldn't be doing things all day long. And also, this is kind of a full circle situation for me, just because I wrote my college essay coming into Elon as an undergrad about taking the commuter train in from Westchester, New York, into the city with my friends or my family. And I think that that was really a big part of growing up for me. So I did have a couple of challenges along the way, of course. The first one being that while I had a topic that I was passionate about, I didn't have a clear idea on what deliverable I would end up with. At first, I was thinking that I would do I would end up with what I had, however, it wouldn't have worked quite the same way. I was thinking about, in addition to illustrating, I was also going to code a website from scratch to house my illustrations rather than using Serif, because I do like to code in addition to design. However, I had some changes when we lost our in-person classes, and you know, just the world changed due to COVID-19. And it's a little different than the changes that Mila had to encounter, the challenges that someone like Mila and some of my other classmates had to encounter in terms of technical difficulties or like not being able to get to the content that they need or the equipment, but rather I actually have been dealing for a few years with like chronic headaches, and the stress of this really just it's one of the ways that my headaches come out is during stress. It's one of my physical manifestations of it, and it really exacerbated what I was already going through. And so for a good while after spring break ended and we started online classes, I just found it very difficult to work because I had felt like it was going to explode about all the time. And so this time crunch that I was now going under really forced me to focus on what was important, what I wanted to get out of this capstone. And the most significant piece for me was showcasing my graphic design skills and my illustration abilities. And while I like coding, it wasn't a career I'm looking to pursue. So I decided that I shouldn't reinvent the wheel, and I was going to use Serif for all of my interactivity. So I first found information mostly through the MTA website. The MTA is the governing body for the subways and the trains and buses. And this was going to be the same regardless of what technology I used to make everything work. So I found information. I was just constantly Googling terms like fun facts about New York, and I was asking people who work in it professionally about ideas that they would have. And once I had a list of all the information that I was considering using, I asked some people who didn't have this interest what was maybe interesting enough to actually continue, and what was maybe only intriguing to someone who had prior fascination. So I eliminated some information and I condensed others that were relevant together. And then once I had those, I ended up with 8 slides, 8 chunks of information, and I then matched each one to a background. So some of mine, about half, are about specific places in New York City. 3 of those are in Manhattan and 1 of them is in Brooklyn. And the other 4 themes that I have are really not about a specific place. They're more generic, but I still try to match it to something that I thought would go with what I was talking about. So I created all of this content by using the pen tool in Illustrator and finding reference images online. So essentially, I was like digitally tracing. It was really important for me that I kept a similar aesthetic, and what I decided to do was enough detail to get the big picture rather than including little details like highlights and shadows. And then once everything was put together, like I said, I used Theros for all my interactivity and animation, and this changed. The most dramatic element of this change was the usability. So I still got a product that I'm so proud of and happy with, but originally I was going to use the same JavaScript framework that our website designers for the Capstone website used. And if you've been on that website, it's very vertical. It's called full page because each section takes up the full page. And so rather than scrolling vertically, I decided to add buttons for what looks like horizontal scrolling. And I'm going to then run through a few of my favorite pieces. However, just due to the time constraints, there'd be screenshots, so you can't witness the fun animations or anything, but I'll try to point out stuff along the way. So this is my title, has my title and my subtitle, and then this Metro card. I also made this map of the subway system. You can see that it's repeated along the background. So it says that it's a journey through New York City subway system with Scott and Grace. One of my scenes that I'm not showing you on this, but you'll notice later, because I'm going to show you all of them in a second, is not actually in the subway, but it's related. We'll get to it. So I have 2 guides, and one of them is Scott, who you can see here. And this is not the first piece. This is a few in. Scott does the first 4, and then Grace does the last 4. This is the ridership data about like annual and weekday ridership information. And so I figured a good place for that to be, since it doesn't match with a specific place, was at the turnstiles where people will enter the subway and where they exit as well. I have decided to highlight all of the numeric information on all of my scenes with this green number. I mean, it's putting the numbers in this green text, sorry. So this is the last scene with Scott. I have some transitions in addition to just the information itself. I wanted it to be like a conversation kind of. And then, so I have last stop and next stop as my way of navigating from page to page. And then I also included the sources. If you click the source button, a little window with the source or sources would pop up, and then there'd be a button to minimize it as well at the end, so it's not on your screen for the whole time. So the next screen that I want to show you is probably my absolute favorite. This is an example of one where the specific location matters. So of course I made it at that specific place. This is the Old City Hall subway station, which is cool for a few reasons. One, it's where the first subway ride left off of, and it's also abandoned, but there's tours to see it. And I really hope that when the coronavirus is, as Mila said, dealt with, then I will be able to go on a tour with my parents. And so the same way that I put the statistics in green, I have decided to highlight the names of the locations, if it is applicable, in blue. And then last, I wanted to show you my last slide, because it shows all of my scenery. I just showed you a few of them. Like I said, I have 8. this map doesn't actually get its own page, it just gets the title, but I love it and I worked hard on it, so I wanted to include it. But yeah, so these are all 8 that you will see throughout. And like I said, there would be some fun animations that I didn't have the ability to show you through this medium, but I really hope later you can look at it yourself. And so that summarizes my project, and you can visit my portfolio or email me, and I hope to answer any questions you have at the end of these presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. And I would be remiss if I did not share with our panelists some compliments that have come from our attendees. Mila, you were complimented on the color solution that you had developed from one of our attendees. And Juliet, one of our attendees, was impressed with your illustration of Old City Hall, especially after learning you did them with the Illustrator pen tool. And we also have some questions coming in. I'll hold off on sharing those questions until we get to the Q&A. I will now move along to Michael Hemstreet, who is in Charlotte. And Michael's project is an interactive microsite that highlights local businesses in the coffee industry. So let's go on with Michael.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gaither, for that introduction. And good evening, everyone. Let me just share my screen here. Great. All right, so thank you again. My name is Michael Hemstreet, and my project is called Locally Sourced. I designed Locally Sourced to be a prototype of a digital marketing tool for local coffee shops. So using the Oak House and Elon as an example, this product shows how small businesses can market themselves using interactive content and advertising. This project was inspired by my previous experience working as a barista and a manager in local coffee shops. When I was working as a barista, I found that many customers didn't know how their favorite drink was made or where we would source their ingredients. And sometimes when the lines would get really long and the cafe was very busy, it was really important to engage the customer in conversation to talk about things just so that their wait time didn't seem as daunting. So this project is really meant to bridge that gap between the employee and the customer, so the customer is well informed and knowledgeable about the brand of the coffee shop and the product. The primary audience for this project would be the customers inside of a local coffee shop, typically around the point of sale or where they would be receiving their drink. This site is also designed to be viewed on mobile devices primarily because this is most likely the device that they would use in a public setting like a cafe. Also another audience that I wanted to include was just local coffee shop owners themselves. They could use this to promote their business and also train onboarding employees if they don't know much about coffee or if they're not familiar with the brand. I produced this project using primarily Adobe's Creative Suites, just a number of programs in there, and also the same Saros platform that Juliet used to animate and embed all of the elements into a site. You can view my project on your desktop computer by typing in locallysourced.mikehems.com. But if you want to use the product like someone in a coffee shop might, I have an opportunity for you to scan a QR code later in the presentation with their mobile device's camera so they can see it how it's intended to be seen. This project started out, pretty much most of my projects start, and that's my sketchpad. I did some brief research to back up the knowledge of coffee that I already had. And so I was able to sketch out different ways that coffee is processed and made, as well as the site layout, how I wanted to look in the end. I also wanted, early on, I wanted to ensure that this was developed for a mobile viewing experience. So I created a paper prototype out of a construction paper phone and a long sheet of white paper that goes through two slits that I made. And so it simulates how a user might scroll through a phone in a kind of creative way early on. I also made a mood board on Illustrator to get just the overall aesthetic feel of how I wanted my site to look. I wanted to include different shades of brown as well as different accent colors like blues and greens as well. So from the sketchpad, I illustrated the features in Illustrator and then placed them into XD to create my first prototype so that we get a feel of how this product may feel like in a phone and with interactions. I was fortunate enough to have Phil Smith, the owner of the Oak House, close by to test out my prototypes and give some valuable feedback about how he wants his brand associated with this site, just how Mila was talking about working with a client. It was good to have that experience working with a client as well. So I used his feedback throughout my project, and it was very helpful. So before I moved from XD to Saros, I wanted to create some video content. Originally, I wanted video to be a major part of my project, so I planned on making 3 different videos, one for the Oak House, and then 2 others for the other businesses that the Oak House uses, that being Joe Van Gogh Coffee Roasters and Homeland Creamery. However, one of the major roadblocks that I faced, and pretty much everyone else faced as well, was the coronavirus and the limitations that it provided us. So that was my major roadblock, and then contacting these businesses proved to be a little bit difficult because they were also dealing with the coronavirus and the restrictions put into place by the public officials. But as a result, I was unable to work with them as much as I had originally hoped. However, I did manage to squeeze in an interview with Phil Smith and get some B-roll at the Oak House that you can see here on the screen. And so I edited together the Oak House video, which came out to be just under 4 minutes long, which is just a little bit too long for what I wanted to use it for. So as a result, through some tweaking and different editing, I was able to break this down into 3 different smaller videos that still highlighted each of the businesses that I had planned on highlighting. So it worked out. So all the content was ready to be embedded into Saros and animated to provide this user experience possible. Working with Saros was kind of tedious at times because of just the large amount of content that I had in the software. But by keeping things organized in different layers and folders, I was able to kind of piece everything together. One thing that I particularly like about Saros is the preview function that it has in the top right corner. I'm actually going to go to that now. So I was able to use this preview function to share different iterations of my project as it may be seen on a mobile device like a coffee shop customer would have. So I intended to have this site be a long scrolling site just because scrolling is a very easy interaction for users to perform. So as you see, as you scroll down, different things animate in. I wanted the videos to start automatically. I muted the audio and I included some closed captions so that the sound doesn't blare in a public setting and they're not too worried about that. Right here in this section, we have different pop process, how it is grown, where it's grown, and how it gets from a plant and into your cup. So there's different carousels and pop-ups that include different animations and whatnot here. As we scroll down, you can see more videos that highlight the local businesses that I wanted to work with. So here's Joe Van Gogh. I included an outbound link right here so that whoever is viewing this may jump to their site and see what other products that they offer. So I'm continuing to scroll down and you learn more about specific drinks and how they're made, different recipes. And that's how we get into the milk portion, which talks about Homeland Creamery in a similar video and a similar setup. And then we get to this portion of the site, which is my favorite, where you can create your own latte. And so here on the left, you can see that a cup animates in and fills up with ingredients with the accompanying information on the right side, which has videos and descriptions for each video. And I used the similar jargon and voice that I would use with a customer as I was working. So I boiled all the science and the steps to making a drink down into digestible terms and formats. And so as you go down, the cup continues to fill up. And then towards the bottom, we have a spot where you can share this to social media and also find the Oak House on social media as well. I'm going to jump back to the presentation. I wanted the user experience to not just be limited to what's on the screen. I really took some thought into how this might be used in this setting, like a local cafe. And so I created this design, which is a sticker design, which is, it mirrors the site's aesthetic and includes a QR code. You can take this moment now to scan your mobile device's camera on the QR code and go to my site that way. But this would be placed on signage and on stickers that will be placed on to-go cups for the Oak House or whatever cafe would use this product, so that users can access it pretty easily. I also included a Google Analytics tracking code so that I can carefully monitor each aspect of the site and how people are using it. And that way I can really pinpoint areas where I can improve upon and maybe add parts for more conversions, like a place to sign up for a mailing list or a place to redeem a rewards code or something like that, whatever that client would want for this product for their coffee shop. And that's all I have for you right now. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the Q&A session. You can also find me on Twitter at Mike D. Hems, or just email me with your questions. I'd be happy to chat. mhemstreet@elon.edu. Thanks again.
Thank you, Michael. And now we will move ahead to London Thompson. London's idea came from her internship last summer with the Audubon, New York, where she was the social media communications intern. And although you would think if she were interning with the Audubon, she would be using Twitter, she used Instagram instead and ended up being a teacher of Instagram. So she's going to tell us a little bit more about her presentation and how she used Instagram to advance some of the goals of Audubon, North Carolina. So we will move ahead to London.
Let me share the screen. So my site is called MediaBirder. So pretty much MediaBirder is a website that is dedicated to teaching professionals at Audubon, North Carolina, how to successfully navigate through Instagram. It was ideally created for adults that were ranging in ages that were older, so 55 and older. The project was produced using Ceros, Adobe Premiere for all the videos, Adobe Illustrator for all of the illustrations, and then WordPress just to host the entire website. And then there's a little web link. And so pretty much when I interned at the office in North Carolina last summer, I was brought in as the social media / communications intern, and my main goal was to relaunch their Instagram account, which had done poorly in the past. And as I was doing my research and learning about the company, I kind of realized that no one in the North Carolina branch knew how to run an Instagram account successfully, because some of the other bigger branches had thousands and thousands of followers, but the North Carolina branch was doing very well. So I ended up actually hosting a webinar that was only an hour long to kind of pitch them just some tips on how to make a better Instagram account. But that hour wasn't enough because none of their accounts have really shifted. They've kind of picked up on some of the tips that I gave them, but I didn't have enough time to kind of give them all the context of things that I would have wanted to. So I thought, why not create something that could be a bit more in depth, but they could like have and be more tangible. So when I created the website, I wanted it to be fun and quirky because Audubon is a company first, but they're very laid back, like going to their business meetings. They're typically in t-shirts and jeans. They're a very fun company. So I wanted to make it fun, but professional. My audience was older, so I knew I needed to really make sure that navigation-wise, the site functioned very simply and easily because when they would visit sites, they wouldn't always know I need to click here. So I had to make sure that all the buttons that I had on my site were very obvious, that they were buttons that they should necessarily click there so that they had no struggles or no complications navigating through the website. I think the biggest thing that helped me kind of gauge how to put together my website was a survey that I conducted in the very beginning of everything, just kind of trying to figure out like what their wants and needs were. And I kind of realized there were two kinds of people that worked at Audubon. Half of them wanted, they were like visual learners, so they preferred learning via video, and then the other half were learners that enjoyed learning via written content. So I tried to like balance the two because I wanted to give everybody kind of everything that they wanted given my own time constraints. And I also really wanted them to make the website feel comfortable for them because I wanted them to know that it was coming from someone that knew the company and that knew like who they were and how their brand voice was. So I really wanted to incorporate, like, as you'll see when I show you in the next couple of slides, because I'll visit the site, I really wanted to incorporate birds that they would know, like some of the popular North Carolina birds, so that when they visited the site, it's like, oh, okay, I know what this is, because I didn't want them to feel intimidated or overwhelmed by any of the content because it can be overwhelming. So one of my biggest challenges was the navigation because first I started off with like buttons just pulsating on like a screen, and that didn't work. So I was torn between what I thought made sense and what an older audience wants. So I had to go back and forth with my previous boss about what would work best. Another issue that I had was because of the whole coronavirus thing, the only person that I could really talk to was my former boss, and she is kind of in my target audience, so she doesn't really know much. I ideally wanted to work with Audubon New York City because they have the highest amount of followers, and they're also the national one that's recognized. But trying to connect to them was virtually impossible due to the circumstances. Um, I also I kind of struggled with trying to gauge what content was necessary and what content was unnecessary because they don't know very many things about Instagram in general, but at the same time, the things that they do know, they wanted me to expound on. They also have very strange, I guess you could say, like social media guidelines that pertain to their different regional offices, chapters, and centers. So I had to make sure that when I was giving them like advice to do for specific things, like for their profile picture, for example, I couldn't tell like the chapters to use that profile picture because they weren't allowed to. So it was just kind of cumbersome to look through a bunch of their social media documents to make sure that I was giving them the right advice moving forward. And so like that's a video that's on the site, but let me see if I can go to the site. Okay, you can see the site? And so this is the site. This is a welcome video, but as I said before, I wanted to make it really comfortable and I wanted to make it really welcoming. So it has the birds in the background, and that's actually the company's bird on the logo. It's a great egret. And then as you kind of go through, I tried to make navigation very simple and very easy and very appealing to look at. And all of this was created in Ceros, all of the like this navigation and stuff. But as you like hover over buttons, like you see the little hummingbird that it'll point next to different items and objects so that you know exactly what it's talking about, just in case they may not know the name of something. And then when you click on stuff, it'll pop up and it'll have like a little, the written version of what you would see. And it's like a little repeating GIF animation that continues to loop. And then some videos that involve more complex like explanation will actually have like a short little video and you click play and it would like give you more information in the context that I would have provided. And so that's kind of the format for the first 3 pages, just the cell phone, the information, and then the buttons. And then for the very last page, which is the resource page, I added this sort of the last minute because I realized that they would really benefit from having external resources to go off of as well, because I mentioned using certain apps. So I also provided a list of like apps that they could like go and check out, and I found webinars that they could go and look at to teach them how to use the various apps in case they didn't know how to use them, and most of them are free or offer discounts to nonprofits. I also found a list of additional articles to give them tips for creating stronger hashtags, Instagram stories, things like that. And then I created just a list of stuff that they had within their network, just to take them directly to those pages for the resources that they had within the company. And yeah, that is pretty much everything. And again, those are just the other additional birds on the site. And I guess yeah, that is the end of everything. And yep, that's my email address, London Thompson London Thompson 96 at gmail.com for any more questions. We can't hear you.
You're muted.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, London. And before we move ahead to our next panelist, Michael, your QR code was a big hit. One audience member said it was very clever, especially that you shared it on the screen during the presentation, and another attendee called it a great idea. So wanted to share those comments with you. A reminder to our audience, please use the chat function and ask your questions. We have a few. We'd like to have some more so we can have a lively Q&A. And we are not headed back to ground yet. We are going to stay up in the air with John Fennell. John is going to be presenting next, and his project is an interactive website that describes an original brand he created for young military pilots. So without further ado, I will hand the microphone virtually over to John. John Fennell.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gaither. Let me just pull up presentation for you guys. All righty. So like Dr. Gaither said, my project was I wanted to, I guess, do something with this idea that I had, which was creating a clothing company for young military pilots. So originally I thought of just creating a website where, you know, it's the typical clothing website where I could sell items and stuff like that. But I thought that that would be very limited in its functionality. And I thought a better way to kind of go about, I guess, increasing my design skills and, you know, talking about the brand itself was to create this website that kind of encompasses a whole bunch of different parts of what makes up the brand itself. Like I said, it's a clothing company for young military pilots, and the website was created to show like a clear picture of the IVH brand. In the top right, you can see the design that kind of sprouted this idea. My brother is a UH-60 pilot for the Air National Guard, and my dad was also a UH-60 pilot. So I kind of know a lot about their culture and the, I guess, what military pilots like and don't like. So I created that design for his Christmas present, and it was a big hit. So I thought, you know, I've seen a lot lately that young military pilots love to interact with so many different people, but love having that old identity of, I guess, being a part of the military community. So when thinking about what needed to be included in this website, I came up with brand persona, brand guidelines, user persona, and brand story. I thought that each piece of these was kind of essential in understanding a brand, and it was you know, really important for what I was trying to accomplish. So I worked in Saros. I made some of the more complex designs that are on the website in Adobe Illustrator, and I wanted to get some kind of consumer insight, so I had sent out a Google form. So when I sent out my survey, I was looking for three things. One, I wanted demographics. It had my brother sent it out to specifically military pilots that were young. So I was more looking for where they came from, where they had been traveling to, just so I can kind of get a better sense of, you know, where they've been in their life and how that could possibly be used in designs later on. I wanted to learn about what they were interested in, what their style was, because it's a clothing company. I asked for, you know, what brands they were currently interested in, because I wanted to kind of, if I'm going to create clothing for them, I wanted to know what kind of style they liked, what clothes they were wearing, and what really intrigued them. And the last thing was their shopping habits. I needed to know, you know, if they were shopping, where did they hear about clothes? If they're going to shop, was it in store or online? Obviously, my store would be online. So I wanted to know what were their motivations for going online. What were some things that turned them off? And, you know, what would be something that could get them to my website to want to, I guess, support the brand. So the design process, I laid out the things that I felt were most important. Obviously, like I said before, the brand persona, brand guidelines, user persona, and our story were the four main pages that I wanted to talk about. And in the brand guidelines, I created a color palette and type style. And this was something I used throughout the entire website. I just wanted to go with a typical military style for the main colors. So I went with a very light green and a much darker green to kind of have some contrast. And because it's, you know, a young brand, I wanted to have some more bright and, I guess, out there colors. So I went with this earth orange and sapling color that I thought, you know, complemented the two greens pretty well, but still kind of popped. So going through the different pages, I had specific, I guess, visions for each one. So the brand persona, because I wanted this brand to, you know, be for young military pilots, I wanted the persona page to really emphasize that young and fun brand personality. So I used the lighter color that we had and really made the page have a lot of animations. I just wanted to keep the user engaged and really kind of make them feel young again in a way, just by having these fun animations and bright colors. Um, and you can see in the bottom right, there's an animation that are the 4 words that I use to describe brand persona. One of them that sticks out is faithful, and that I kind of came from when I sent out the survey. A major thing that they had said was when they purchase things, it's usually through word of mouth. And I've been around this community, and it's a very tight-knit community and support one each other. And so they are very faithful to each other. They like what each other like and trust each other. So I wanted that to be kind of a main part of the brand persona. And then courageous and confident are 2 things that you need to be in order to be a pilot. So I thought brand might as well be it as well. And humorous, once again, just going back to that young kind of fun part of the brand. And then brand guidelines. When designing this, I wanted it to focus on the content. So the design goal was to create a clear and simple style to emphasize the brand guidelines content. And so I went with a simple white background. I didn't really use a whole bunch of animations, and I made sure that the text was very large and easy to read, because this is really kind of like the structure of the brand, like if you're going to create something, what you're going to be using, and to really understand what the brand was created for, what its mission is, and what its whole purpose is going to be. User persona. A lot of times when you create user personas, a lot of people use a picture so that you can put kind of a face to the person that you're describing. I didn't want to do that because I felt like I was able to use illustrations and animations to really kind of paint this picture. So my design goal was to present the user persona with interesting visuals to help like paint this clear picture of the person. So I used a darker color because it was a masculine pilot. So I really want to emphasize that like dark, gritty, masculine person. And then I just provided intriguing visuals that kind of tied back to their military lifestyle. So you can see the classic, aviators that pilots wear, mustache, just to emphasize that they're male. And then I used dog tags to kind of talk about where they're from, their rank, what their relationship status are, and what their occupation was. So I just wanted to have kind of fun with it, but really help paint that clear picture in your head of what this person is like. And the last thing was just how this brand came to be. Like I said, it's kind of stemmed off of my brother, who's a UH-60 pilot for the National Guard. So I wanted to tell that story about our 2 separate paths and how, he has been working so long in the military world to become a pilot, and I have been working so long in kind of the multimedia field to be able to create this amazing content, and how, IFH brings that all together. So the design goal was to create an interactive timeline showing 2 separate journeys. Obviously, there are 2 separate timelines, but I wanted to emphasize that by having 2 separate colors. So mine's the light orange, my brother's is the nice military green that you see there. And then I wanted users to kind of have to interact. So I would put pictures of kind of from the events that were happening, and then when they clicked on them, it would reveal a story. That way they could stay engaged and kind of slowly discover how it all came to be. So just to sum it all up, once again, I had the 5 pages that were kind of essential for understanding brands. And I think in today's world, people care more and more about where their stuff's coming from, who's creating it. And I think there's more of a reason for people to kind of use whether clothes or different brands to express themselves. So I thought, creating this website that would help someone learn about, the clothes they're buying, who the people are that are giving it to them, or kind of just the brand overall that they're going to support, that they're going to wear, that they're going to talk about with their friends, was just something that, could be used by any brand. But I thought this was a great way to kind of make boring documents that just kind of seem flat come to life and really emphasize who this brand is and what they stand for. So thank you for your time. If you want to see the rest, there's a whole bunch of content in there. So you can go to ifhclothing.com and check it all out. If you want to contact me, you can email me, jfanel@elon.edu, or you can shoot me a text at the phone number on the screen. So thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to come and spend this time with us.
Thank you, John. You can be my wingman anytime. All right, John, you have some compliments from our attendees. One commented on your user persona that they called very creative and a good use of your Illustrator skills. And another one complimented on how cool it was that your brand is that you're creating is so personal to you, and the branding is so consistent. And it was called excellent by our attendees. So attendees, please keep the compliments and the questions coming. We sure appreciate them. And we will have Q&A shortly after our last presenter. And there is always something cooking with her. We are moving to Brianna Lawrence, who has created Little Chef, an interactive cookbook that teaches children that food can be both nutritious and delicious. It's a mobile-friendly interface for children ages 9 through 12 who want to increase their love of cooking. So we will now move on to Brianna Lawrence. Brianna. Okay, Brianna. Brianna, you're on mute. Brianna, please unmute so we can hear you.
There we go. Whew,
There we go.
sorry, you guys.
Thank you.
Technical difficulties. Okay. Good afternoon, you guys. My name is Brianna Lawrence, and I'm the creator of Little Chef. Little Chef essentially is an interactive cooking guide that teaches children that food can be both nutritious and delicious. My target audience is 9 to 12-year-old children, but in general, the interface can be used by anyone. The technology that I utilized was Ceros as well as Adobe Creative Cloud. And the project can be accessed at littlechef.wix.com/cookbook. The main mission that we had, or that I had when creating Little Chef, was that I wanted to empower young people with the basic skills that they need to produce nutritious, delicious, and homemade meals for oneself as well as others. So, in general, the reason why I chose this topic was because I am a former elementary school teacher. I taught fourth grade as well as middle schoolers with regard to language arts. And in general, I'm a diehard foodie. I'm always creating something interesting in the kitchen. So I wanted to combine my passion of teaching as well as cooking, and that's how Little Chef was born. The primary design choices that I decided to implement was creating a color scheme that was both boy friendly as well as female friendly. I wanted to make sure this interface could be used by anyone. I also created a logo, and I wanted to make sure the logo fully embodied the Little Chef brand, which you can see right here in the middle. I also utilized splats to showcase the fun nature and undertone that we wanted to convey with our brand, as well as throughout implementing and recording all of the recipes, I realized that the splats had a dual meaning. I realized that it essentially emphasized or helped celebrate the fact that when you're in the kitchen, you can make mistakes and they still can turn out to be beautiful masterpieces. Lastly, I focused on the icon. So I created a hamburger for my menu, and I created this back button as well. Those are the primary forms of navigation within the interface. Throughout the development of Little Chef, I utilized focus groups qualitative surveys as well as regressive surveys to get data to help support my idea of why I wanted to choose certain recipes, or in general, what recipes and what cooking utensils, as well as not applications, what as well as like whether I would use like blenders or certain types of knives. I wanted to know, have data to support my decisions essentially. So when it came to qualitative surveys, I received 11 surveys from children ages 9 through 12. And when it came to regressive surveys, I received 89 responses from adults ranging from ages 21 through 58, which in total allowed me to have 100 people respond to the surveys. Overall, the Little Chef Test Kitchen cooked and tasted 35 recipes total. Each recipe was made twice before choosing 15 recipes to be reviewed by 3 small focus groups consisting of 4 people. Of the 15 recipes, 6 recipes were chosen to be debuted within the Little Chef interface. Now, if we were to view the interface through Ceros, then you would start at this home screen. Because I am presenting via a PowerPoint presentation, I did not want to worry about any glitches. So this is the starting animation that you would see. The plate would swoop in and Let's Cook would pulsate. And once it pulsates, you would click the button, which will bring you to the main menu. For the purpose of this presentation, we will focus on these 3 splats in the corner: culinary creations, best practices, and questions. Best practices essentially was where I decided to dispel important kitchen safety techniques and rules. So I decided to focus on some of the dirtiest areas in the kitchen, and I gamified this information. So essentially, a user would click a box and the information would reveal to them why an object was dirty and how they could clean it. After you finished Operation Clean, you would navigate using the next arrow, and I put together an infographic to show users how they create their own disinfectant with Clorox. Now, once we finish best practices, we can get down to the best part, which in my opinion is culinary creations. So the interface is broken down to 6 main sections, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. Brunch is breakfast, mains consist of lunch and dinner, add-ons consist of snacks and sides, shareables consist of larger portions of any type of food in general, and goodies consist of desserts as well as baked goods, and drinks consist of smoothies, infused waters, anything that you can drink essentially. Within the interface, I chose 6 recipes. So starting from the drink section and working our way towards brunch, I have an infused water. Underneath every recipe is a section called Yes Chef, which highlights a tip or trick that users could utilize to help them to be able to execute this recipe efficiently. And each picture that you see is clickable and allows the user to navigate further into the interface so that they can explore the specific recipe instructions. Okay, now moving on into add-ons, mains, and brunch. We have a tropical fruit salad, we have pizza, and we have breakfast platters. They're all laid out the same, but one thing that I wanted to highlight was that the overall ratings were given through the focus groups. Heatometer basically talks about whether a recipe is hot or not. Skill level designates whether there's a knife used, whether there's a heat source used, and determining on what heat source, whether it's a microwave or whether it's an oven or whether it's a stove. Depends on how many knives you get to showcase the skill level. Moving on, Once we get into choosing a recipe, say we chose brunch, for instance, it would move us further into the instruction panel. And this is where I started to blend my knowledge as a teacher as well as my passion with cooking. I realized that everybody does not learn the same. So I utilized the I do, you do, we do method, which is utilized within schools. And essentially what it is I do is when an instructor or a teacher performs a task. You do is when the user or student performs a task, and we do is when both parties perform a task together. Within this interface, I focus on executing I do and you do instructions. We do is still under construction, just so that I can ensure that I am executing the best format for this particular section. I do is seen at the bottom of the screen, and it is a video format where the steps are displayed underneath the video of the instructor creating the dish. And you do are simple step-by-step instructions in a written format. And lastly, when you go to questions, it it navigates you to the need help page, and essentially you are able to see a splat that says learn more, or see a splat that says contact us. Both splats navigate you to the Little Chef homepage, and essentially you can learn more about like our mission and the future of Little Chef, or you can simply contact us and click the nav bar, and it will navigate you down to the bottom of the interface so that you can send us any questions, comments, or concerns. And then if you guys had any, questions or comments that you would like to ask me, you can feel free to contact me via Twitter. You can contact me at my personal email, blawrence3@elon.edu, or you can go to littlechef.interactivecookbook@gmail.com. And since I have a little time left, I'm going to navigate everybody to the Little Chef homepage. And essentially, it's a one-page layout. If you click the View Little Chef button, it'll take you to the interface. Inside, you'll see that you have fun and easy recipes, step-by-step tutorials, and a guide. You see our mission, as well as some of the other recipes that I was not able to put into the interface. A little bit about the author, and finally the contact form. Okay. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. And we have about 20 minutes remaining for hopefully a lively Q&A. If you still have questions, we'd love to hear them. Please use the chat function. And a reminder, you might want to use the grid setting, which is on the upper right-hand part of your screen, so you can see all the presenters. And presenters, I have some specific questions for you, and I will save a question I have that was addressed to all of you for the latter part of the Q&A. And if you'll take just a minute in between each, or a couple seconds between each presentation, so I can give you the presenting privileges, that would be appreciated. So the first question we have is for Mila, and the question is, did you keep up with the amount of time you spent working with your client compared to the amount of time you spent creating the website and the brand guide?
That's a good quick question. I did not track anything. I know that I definitely spent more time talking to the client. Well, I think it was even. I spent a whole lot of time talking to the client, but it also took a lot of work to go back and just implement changes that that they had. So no, I did not track it. I should have, because it was a whole lot, but no, I didn't track it. I think it was about even though.
Thank you, Mila. Our next question is for London. London, the question is, your website is very thorough and easy to navigate. Have you thought about using it as a template for other companies or brands? Please pause for 1 second. Go ahead. London, you're on mute.
There we go. Yes,
we go.
and uh, I was gonna use the same template to do a layout like that for Instagram and then Twitter, and then to help them with Facebook stuff as well. So it was gonna be specifically geared towards them, but then I started reaching out to the other branches, and they're starting to ask for like different stuff. So possibly in the future, I might try to tailor it more towards what the other branches are struggling with, because a lot of the other ones are also struggling. So.
London, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We have another question for you. And the question is this a document that would be easily adapted for major updates of Instagram? And was that a challenge or a non-issue for your purposes?
Yes, it was a challenge. That's something that I was thinking about in the very beginning. Because at first I was just gonna do it all in WordPress so that they could like update it as the years come. But someone had come in and spoke to our class about Ceros, and she made a very good point, which is why I made it in Ceros. So I made it so that the company would need to hire me, because I didn't want to keep creating free stuff for somebody over the course of time. So I wanted to present them with an amazing product, but I also wanted to give them something that they couldn't do themselves and that they would need me to like continue to do.
Thank you. Our next question is for Brianna, so I will give her the presenting privileges. Okay. Brianna, the question for you. Great job incorporating your educational background and skills. What was the favorite recipe that you included?
My favorite recipe, well, I'm tied, honestly. It's between the ice cream, which I made with Cool Whip, or the cauliflower nuggets, which really look like chicken nuggets, if I have to say so myself. And they taste good too.
Thank you, Brianna. The next question is for all presenters. So we'll try to go through in order. And Brianna, since you've just presented, we'll start with you and then move through. So here's the question. It has to do with COVID-19. COVID-19 has forced us to deal with big constraints. These were uncomfortable, scary, and disheartening. The coping you did, though, offers a huge lesson teaching us we can adapt substantially even under duress. I'm wondering whether, in an odd way, perhaps all of you have gained some confidence from the crisis that you would not have otherwise developed. How does this prepare you for 2021 and beyond? Brianna, we'll start with you.
I feel as though experiencing having to remotely work from home and all the other challenges that COVID-19 brought about will prepare me for 2021 due to the fact that I am able to make full use of any space now. Like I can really adapt it to how I need it, even though I'm in my small 1-bedroom apartment, as well as I realized that just because you may be stuck in the house, you may eventually, formulate new work routines or whatever. And that's okay as long as you stick to the plan that you prescribe for yourself. So for instance, I work best in the early morning. So I tried to do most of my tedious work in the early morning, and then some of the easier work, graphic work or editing, in the afternoon, just so that I could work to what I was most comfortable with.
Thank you. We'll move through the order of the participant panel on the right-hand part of your screen. And next up will be John. Would you like to respond to the question?
Yeah, I think one of the things that really throws people is the lack of routine. When we're not getting up and being forced to go to class, it not only just takes away from that time of being in class, but the time of getting outside the house. And obviously, we all had to adjust our routines and kind of take it one day at a time. But I think one of the biggest things is just when you don't have professors or people kind of weighing down on you to get things done right away, you kind of have to find the inner motivation in yourself. And I think through this, I kind of realized what it's like to wake up without a professor, without an external person telling you that you need to go do work. And kind of made me figure out a little bit more of what I like to do and what I could do, if no one else was around. And what work I really enjoyed. So I think that going into 2021, I'm just going to keep focusing on what I love to do and really just try and improve those skills. Because once we're out, I mean, we're pretty much out now, there's not going to be professors helping us out, telling us what to do. So it's kind of going to be on us. And I think this was a good way to kind of throw us into the water, throw us into the deep end, and just let us kind of figure it out.
Mhm. Good. Thank you, John. Before we move to Juliet, London, Mila, and Michael, I'll read the question one more time so it's fresh in everybody's mind. The question again is COVID-19 has forced us to deal with big constraints. These were uncomfortable, scary, and disheartening. The coping you did, though, offers a huge lesson teaching us we can adapt substantially even under duress. I wonder whether, in an odd way, perhaps all of you have gained some confidence from the crisis that you would not have otherwise developed. How does this prepare you for year 2021 and beyond? Juliet?
Hi. I would say that I think I actually learned more about adapting through planning this event. Michael and I were two of the people on the Capstone committee who plan it, and I think that was a really big struggle to make this virtual event for the first time ever and see how that would work. Because my capstone, like I said, I didn't really face any of the technical difficulties that some others did because I already had the personal preference of not liking hardware. So I really wanted to make sure everything could be done just from my computer myself. But I did learn about some important things for like maintaining a routine, which is not easy. But I live like in a 1-bedroom with a roommate who's also working from home, and we don't have a desk or a table or anything. So there's only so much counter space for the both of us. So I think I'm learning the importance of sitting at a desk because it's been really hard to just have a laptop sitting on the couch. But I'm really glad that the event ran smoothly, and I think everyone did a great job. So I think I just learned more about changing the event plan rather than my own project, because that was my personal issue that I'm gonna have to deal with my own headaches for as long as this comes.
Thank you, Juliet, and excellent work. We know a lot of time went into planning this event, and we congratulate you and thank you. London, what is your response to this question?
Honestly, I felt like it was the whole thing took a blow to my confidence because I was constantly kind of guessing, am I on the right track? Am I doing enough work today? Did I get up early enough to do this? It was, I guess, stressful is an understatement. So I found myself overwhelmed a lot of the time as a result of everything, which I guess in the long run is good because, next year, hopefully when things go back to normal, the hustle and bustle of like a 9 to 5, along with regular life and bills and all that other stuff, won't seem like it's so bad because at least I kind of have an understanding of how to keep going when everything feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. So if anything, I feel like I learned like time management and how to just like keep on going and stay level headed.
Thank you, London. Mila?
Yeah, confidence. I definitely gained some. This whole thing just kind of taught me to, even when things don't go at all, how you planned, just that you can keep going and you can like just make it work. That life doesn't go as planned like ever. So it just kind of teaches you. Well, this whole thing just taught me to just make it work. So I gained confidence, yes, because this whole thing did not go as planned at all. And then dealing with a client too was a lot of just not going as planned. So I definitely gained some confidence, yes, and it took this pandemic to kind of give me that. So yes, I'm glad. Well, okay, I'm not glad this happened, but I learned from it. So yeah.
Thank you, Mila. And Michael.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone has touched on. They all made some really great points. But it really, this whole program has tested our time management skills. And that was tough as it was when we were in person doing it together. But when we all shifted virtually, overnight practically, it really was tough transitioning to that, just as far as communication goes. I know we had a lot of video chats and stuff, but that doesn't really replace the human, face contact that we all were used to. But I think that going forward, we all have a great response to the interview question about how we overcame a tough situation. Like Mila mentioned, she was working with a client and I was working with a few people as well. And I kind of had to think on my feet pretty quickly about how I can get around that. And so it really tested our abilities with digital media and about how we can network from our houses.
Good. So I'm struck by one of the comments that John made about how you've had to do a lot of this without the resources that you would have with face-to-face instruction. And it occurs to me in some ways you were almost working as freelancers. And so with that spirit, what advice would you give to a freelancer, or hopefully we don't have another group of iMedia students that have to go through what you are going through, but what advice would you give them about this process of developing a capstone and how to work without the instructors and the level of access that you're accustomed to of being on campus? So what's your advice? And let's just go ahead and use the hand function if you'd like to raise your hand to answer that question. We will just move directly to you. Michael, since we have you on screen, what advice would you give?
Sure. So you mentioned in your question something about confidence, and I think that just speaks volumes for those who are freelancing and trying to be out there and grind for different positions and work, especially now. In a way, some people or a lot of folks have been, the playing field has been leveled basically. So how you respond to that will speak volumes to the work that you put in as well. And so just really marketing yourself to be, resilient is very important, and just having the confidence coming out of this that you can get the job done.
Good, thank you. Would anyone else like to answer that question? Okay, Brianna, and then we'll go to John. Brianna?
For me personally, I struggled with having too much content and not enough time to be able to get everything in. Like I said, I had 35 recipes that I tested and everything. So that was one of the things in general that I would say when going and doing an interface or any type of major project is know when one phase is complete and when another phase starts, because sometimes things seem like they can continue to compile and build on top of each other, but you can come to an endpoint and you can user test, you can distribute it to the world or what have you, and then come back and do a phase two. I think that is something that was big for me in general.
Thank you, Brianna. And I saw John's hand up as well. John?
Yeah, I think kind of something that's happened throughout every time in quarantine is the day doesn't matter, which I think is something that, different from, I guess, regular work life, like as opposed to the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, especially if you're going to be a freelancer. Is not really a work time that you're set on. You could be working at 6 a.m. if you wanted. You could be working at 9 p.m. if you wanted on Saturday, Tuesday, whenever. And I think that just kind of what this has taught us all is, we know what we can do to get, I guess, the most out of ourselves. But I think one thing is, we sit at our laptops and goof around and aren't really focused a lot of the times. So I definitely taking the time to just enjoy certain things and doing what you like when you have that time is very essential, so that, you know, when you sit down, just like start with something small in your work, and then hopefully it'll just flow from there. But I think definitely, as far as going out, if anyone's going to be a freelancer, this is an extremely like informative way of, there's no business hours, there's you and
Yeah.
what you decide. So I think that was a very interesting way to look about this.
Thank you, John. Does anyone else want to respond? Okay. We are just about out of time, and I would like to first address our panelists and give our warmest congratulations for some excellent presentations. And what an interesting range of presentations and different approaches. And you really brought to bear all that you've learned, hopefully over this year. And one of the things that really struck me is how passionate you were about each of your projects, and it really shined through. And so we congratulate you and we wish you the very best of luck. I would like to thank our attendees for joining us. We certainly appreciate you getting a chance to see our terrific students and the work they're doing. And we will end on that note. A warm congratulations to all. And thank you for all who worked so hard to put all of this together. This was not the idea. We would have hoped to have seen everybody together in Long, but a lot of people worked really hard, Juliet and company, to make this come to fruition. So congratulations to all. Thank you for joining us and have a good evening.